let's talk about birth trauma. This week is Birth Trauma Awareness Week, which I didn't even know was a thing, but I can definitely relate. I have really been wanting to make this video just about my birth experience and processing my trauma and just getting it out there because unfortunately not everyone has an amazing birthing experience. You don't always get everything on your birth plan, or like me, you may get nothing on your birth plan pretty much. So we're just gonna do my makeup and chat about some trauma. So I already did my skincare skin prep, so we're just gonna jump right on into the fun stuff while we chat about the not so fun stuff. I'm gonna start with the Essence Bouncy Plump. I honestly don't even really know where to start with this, so we'll just kind of go through it from beginning to end relatively. So quick foundation, I mixed these two of the Superstay, the 102 and the 112, because the shade in between isn't the right tone, but these two together is like perfect. But anywho, when I was pregnant, our sleeping patterns were not great. We were staying up super late, so went to bed finally around, I think it was like 3 or so in the morning. Then like an hour later or so, Sean came to bed. It was like 4-ish, and I woke up. I was kind of cramping and it was just getting more annoying. I was trying to time it to see if it was contractions, but it wasn't very consistent, so I just kind of laid there and tried to ignore it and just try to fall back asleep, but was just tossing and turning and was just in pain and discomfort. So it was around 5 in the morning because I had looked at my phone a couple minutes after and it was like 5:02 or something, and I had felt a pop. Like I could hear it practically. Like it was weird. So yeah, my water broke. So I actually didn't wake Sean because I was just in denial, so I just laid there for a few minutes and just like, oh crud, is this really happening? So I just got up, didn't wake him, waddled to the bathroom, was like right in front of the toilet, and it started to kind of gush. I was able to thankfully catch a lot of it, so cleaned myself up and then was in the middle of scrubbing the floor, and that's what woke Sean up, and he's just like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, it's time. Sorry, you got like an hour of sleep. And it was funny because I kept telling him like, we need to go to bed soon, like the baby's gonna come any day now. But anywho, so laying in bed, slept an hour, woke up for an hour tossing and turning, water broke, was in denial, had to clean it all up. It wasn't super gross, TMI. But I did hop in the shower. I know a lot of people say that you're not supposed to, but like I had stuff all down my legs and felt gross, so I at least just wanted to rinse off before we, you know, headed to the hospital. But ran around, was packing the last few things that we needed. Sean was showering quick. We were using this random app I had found to track them, and they were like pretty consistent, like a few minutes apart. So I was getting anxious, like, we gotta go. He might be here like real quick. Got to the hospital, and as we were driving, they started to like slow down a bit, and then while we were there, they definitely started to space back out. So I think it was really just the movement and being panicked and moving around that they were so frequent. I don't know if anyone else has ever had that, but anywho, got to the hospital. I think it was like 6:30 in the morning when we got there. Used my Camo Liquid Bronzer Contour. When we got there, they were super chill. I wasn't in too much pain. So we had a nurse for the tiniest bit, and she was just like the charge nurse. And then we got our actual nurse, got everything hooked up, and they checked me and whatnot. And I was about like 3 centimeters dilated. So everything kind of just blurs a bit after this. So I literally sat down and like wrote notes with Sean not that long ago, just because I knew I wanted to film this video eventually. But it was probably like an hour and a half, like 8:30 or so. I would say that I went up to 4 centimeters, which was good. So my contractions still weren't very consistent. They were coming, but they weren't consistent, and the pain was starting to get worse at that point. But just hanging out. I really wanted to have as natural of a birth as possible. Surprise, didn't happen. It was a little while later, I think it was around like 10 a.m. or so, give or take, that I decided to get the epidural. So when I was having my contractions, so your pelvis kind of like curves weird. It literally felt like if someone was taking like, not really a knife, because it felt just like a strip of metal or something, like someone was trying to crush through like the curvature of my pelvis on my right side especially, and it was just like crushing. It didn't feel like someone was like crushing it this way, like it felt like they were trying to like crush like through it and like cut it in half almost, but like the way that the bone like bends. It's really strange to try to describe, but That's what it felt like. It was terrible. I didn't even feel the pain like in my actual like abdomen, my uterus area. It was all like in my hips. So that is what made me get the epidural. I eventually met the doctor at some point. I don't remember when. So the clinic that I went to is a bit smaller, you know, Midwest, small town clinic and everything. So I didn't have like one specific OB that was my doctor that I saw for every appointment that was going to deliver my baby. It was like a group of 3 that you saw and kind of rotated. There was like one doctor I saw the most, and then there was another one that I saw a few times, and then one I only saw like once, I think. It's just kind of the luck of the draw. They just schedule you with whoever. I'm sure you could probably try to ask, but it's like a rotation. Like if you go into labor and your doctor's not the one that's on rotation and on call, like you're gonna get whoever, which I actually kind of liked because then it prepared me. The week that he came, I had an appointment Monday because my due date was that Saturday, and all 3 doctors that I normally saw were gone, and then the backup doctor that they normally used, he also had to like not be able to come, which I actually got to meet him once and he was cool. So then they had like a backup of a backup. They almost had to put the hospital on bypass, which my follow-up appointment after having him, the doctor said they've never had to do in like 30 years that he's been practicing there, which I thought was absolutely insane, but how fitting because it's me. Why would anything ever go right? So the doctor that I had, she was from like further up north in Wisconsin, and she seemed okay and fine, but we don't like her, and we'll get to that at the end. Anywho, it was around like 11 at that point, and she came in and was like, hey, you're not progressing. You've gone a centimeter in this long. So how do you feel about trying to do some Pitocin to kind of push things along? And I'm like, sure, get this baby out of me. I do not care. At that point, just everything that I wanted was out the window pretty much, practically. I still wanted to go as natural as possible with an epidural, but I'm like, sure, I'm in a lot of pain. Give me the epidural. Had that going, and then give me the Pitocin, like help kick this little dude out. And then I still didn't progress for quite a while. So when you get the epidural, you obviously are stuck in bed, you're laying on your back, but they kind of like wedge a pillow behind you, so you're like slightly tilted one way or the other so that you're not laying flat, because the epidural, like the medicine, will settle or something, so to speak. So I was on like more on my right side. That's the right side that was hurting more, and I still felt a crushing pain through the epidural. So they were trying to rotate me to the other side just to see if that would help kind of make the medicine flow through my body better, using She Glam Rose Ritual. So when they were trying to flip me, I was on that side for like not even half a second. As I was turning and getting onto my left side, we had a monitor on him, on my belly of course, and his heart rate started to drop and it was going down fast. The nurse hit like the emergency button and all the nurses came running in to help and check, and the charge nurse was there and she's like, let's just flip you back. He seems to not like the position that we're moving you into, and flip me back. So that was the start of the scariness, which I know that sounds really little, but it was absolutely terrifying. Everything was okay. The doctor came in shortly after and she's just like, I think he just didn't really like the way you were going and whatnot, and we moved you back and everything seems fine now. So we're just gonna monitor him closely and make sure that he stays doing okay. And then also to preface this, I had gone up a little bit in between the heart rate dropping. I had gone up to like 5 at 3 o'clock and then jumped up to 6 at 3:30, and like between 3:30 is when all of this craziness was happening. So my doctor rechecked me, and afterwards she said that like part of the reason his heart rate might have been funky was also the dilation. I don't really know and don't really understand it. It's really confusing. She also at that point, just because of the heart rate issue, kind of talked to me about worst case scenario, you know, in case this happens again or there's any issues, let's sign the paperwork for a C-section if needed, so that's one less thing we have to go over and just makes things go faster and one less thing to worry about. And that is the one thing I was dreading hearing. I did not want a C-section. Absolutely no thank you. Essence Silky Blur. So this is the time where I'm like dilating very quickly from like 3 until having him. The L, and then on a little puff. Forehead, I like to really blend out. Let that set for a second. I know I look absolutely insane. Like I said, time blurs. I think it was like 5 in the evening or something, like 4:35-ish. My epidural stopped working and I kept pressing the button, and I eventually called the nurse like, I don't know what's going on, but like this isn't working. Like I am in a lot of pain. So they check my epidural, and if you don't know how an epidural works, they put like the medicine in your spine, and then there's like a tubing that then connects to the tubing of the pump of the epidural medicine machine dispenser thing, and the connector between like the tubing from my back to the tubing of the machine is broken and leaking. That's why I was in excruciating pain. They had no idea how long it was broken for. It was like just slightly cracked and not fully connected, so it was just kind of like dripping and not giving me the full amount of medicine. So, because again, it's me, and why would anything go the way it's supposed to? So they had to call the anesthesiologist, so I had to wait, and he had to come and fix it. They basically had to like open an entire new one and just swap out the part. This is super crusty, dusty, old, Wet n Wild Mega Glow contour. This is Dolce de Leche. So he came and fixed that, swapped the parts out, and I was getting a bit more relief. But people say, oh yeah, I had the epidural and everything was great, couldn't feel a thing. I don't know what's wrong with me, but like you can still feel pressure or whatever they say, but like pain wise, it's all gone. My pain was still pretty much there. It just took it down a few notches. Yeah, so then fixed that and it did get better, thank goodness. So at this point, everything was chill. I was 8 centimeters, and then they didn't check me again until 6:20 is what Sean told me. Milani Luminoso. But yeah, around 6:20 or so, we finally went up to like 9 centimeters. So from 3 p.m. we were at 5, jumped up to 6 at 3:30, 4:30 we were at 8, and then basically 6:30 we were at 9 already. So things were looking good, and our nurse that was with us since we checked in, she was getting excited because she's like, oh, hopefully like, you know, he'll be here soon, because the shifts are 7 to 7, and she's like, maybe I'll get to see him before I leave for the day. Spoiler alert, she didn't get to see him. And then ColourPop Flexitarian. For my eyebrows, I use the e.l.f. Instant Brow Lift. I think this is in taupe. I used to get like the medium brown, but I think I actually like this a tiny bit better. Not perfect, but whatever. For eyeshadow primer, gonna use the Ulta Matte Veil. For eyeshadow, ColourPop Feeling Bubbly. I use these two colors here, and I just mix them on a blender brush and right in the outer corner and into that crease. Okay, so my camera decided to stop recording. Anywho, sorry about that. Just slowly building it up. I don't know why my makeup looks so harsh in this lighting right now. Like, what is going on with my blush out here? But for some reason in my viewfinder, I don't know if it's my lighting or what, but it looks really harsh. I promise it's not actually that bad. And then for the lid, I'm gonna take this bottom center shade. So this is where things start to ramp up a little bit. I'm just gonna keep on chatting. We were last checked at like 6:30ish, and I was 9 centimeters. Got checked again around like 7:30ish, a little bit before, and I was like 9 3/4 is basically what she said, like 9 with like a tiny bit of like an edge or lip or something like that. But they said that I could start pushing, even though it didn't feel right to me. Like, I'm like, well, I'm not 10 centimeters. Shouldn't I wait until I'm 10? But like, I was so out of it. I was exhausted, and I just went with it. So I started to push back with that blending brush. Shader brush. I'm gonna use those same 2 shades for my lower lash line, but started to push, and it's the weirdest thing because if you want, the nurse can try to feel and see if while you're pushing, like if they can feel you making any progress, and it's the weirdest thing ever. You're trying to push whilst having their hand up in, you know. But yeah, so she said I was doing good and we're pushing, and then I tried pushing kind of more on my side, and I didn't know this, but apparently you can push like 2 different times per contraction if your contractions are long enough or something. So I was doing that, and we tried for, it was around like half an hour, and then as I was pushing, I could hear his monitor, his heart rate start to drop, because at one point a few hours earlier, I don't know when this was exactly, but they weren't able to monitor him very good, so they decided to do the internal monitor, which was another thing that I didn't want. But I trusted the doctor because they're a doctor, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm my first time mom, you know, and just tired and want the baby out of me. But yeah, so we weren't really progressing, and his heart rate was kind of going down a little bit because, like, you know, you can hear it beeping and you can hear it go a little bit slower. And then the next time I pushed, it happened again, and it kept going down lower and lower, and it was in like the 40s, 50s, like really, really low. So had me stop, and the doctor came in, and she said that she thought it was time to go ahead and do an emergency C-section because it wasn't safe to continue pushing anymore, which was really hard for me because that was the one thing that I really didn't want. And it's still really hard for me. Before I start crying, let's at least do my lashes. And of course this was late at night, and all of like the surgical people and everything we're gone home for the day. By the time his heart rate started to drop, it was probably like 45 minutes to an hour, like kept pushing for a while. And then the doctor came in and discussed that. Yeah, by the time we decided to do the C-section and call the people in, I think it was, yeah, like 8:30 or so. And then, of course, all the OR techs, the anesthesiologist came up. That probably only took like 20 to 30 minutes. And then it was about 10 after 9 when we headed back to go into the OR for the C-section. So before they wheeled me back, just rewind a tiny bit, they give you some different like anti-nausea meds and whatnot. So I took that. One was like a little drink thingy, and then I think they gave me some sort of medication also. I don't quite remember. It's all a blur, like I said. I just remember that because, surprise, it didn't really work very well. But yeah, so wheel back to the OR. I go by myself, of course, at first, and they start prepping everything and prepping me, starting to, you know, open and everything. And then they bring Sean back in once, you know, they've cut through enough layers and everything. For lips, I'm using the ColourPop lippy pencil. What is this? Oh Snap. And then for lipstick, I'm gonna use the L'Oreal Fairest Nude. This is a bit more brown than I was expecting. I'm gonna use my e.l.f. Glow Reviver Lip Oil Rose Envy. So, head back to the OR, and they're doing their thing, cutting me open, and just getting on the table alone was wild because you're there, you can't move, and me being me, I just want to help so badly. I just want to be able to move and just get over so they don't have to lift my big old body over. But they just whipped me on over, got me in, and the weirdest thing that I didn't realize during a C-section is that they have your arms like strapped down like this, like T-posing. It's really weird and pretty uncomfortable. But anywho, they bring Sean back and he comes sit by my head. I'm getting really nauseous. They gave me the anti-nausea medicine and I'm really nauseous. Anyways, so the anesthesiologist, he has this trick of like if you have like a little alcohol wipe and you like kind of waft it in front of your nose, it's supposed to help with nausea. I feel like it made my nausea worse because as they're cutting through and doing their thing, opening, and side note, I could feel everything. I couldn't feel the actual incision, like the cutting, but like the movement and the pulling was excruciatingly painful. People say like, oh, it's a little bit of pressure. I was like in a lot of pain. I don't know if it's just because I have a low pain tolerance or something, which I used to have a really high pain tolerance. I've had really bad sciatica. Looking it up, it says when you have a lot of high pain issues that your pain tolerance can actually go down. So I don't know if my pain tolerance just went down to like 0 at this point after the bone crushing earlier and everything, or if my epidural just wasn't working quite right, because for the C-section, I already have the epidural, which is great. They tweaked the medicine or something, and before we went back, the anesthesiologist was like testing to make sure that I was numb everywhere. On my right side, which is the side where my hip was all messed up and like crushing feeling, it wasn't even. Like I could feel a lot lower down on my right side. So I don't know if it had anything to do with that or if I'm just lucky and the epidural just from it being broken earlier and not getting it. I don't know what happened, but like I could feel everything. Someone once said that having a C-section is like someone washing dishes in your stomach, and I totally feel that, but like they're washing like knives and things. Like it was excruciatingly painful. But yeah, the nausea was really intense and I just literally was laying there and just started to get sick. And Sean was right there next to me, so that was great. But my nurse was there. She grabbed like an Emmy bag and was able to like catch it, clean me up. But it was really rough. And then throwing up whilst they're cutting through you, that was also just added to the pain and discomfort. But there came a point while they were cutting through and everything, and the pain was so intense, and I'm pretty sure it was after the vomiting, but this is the hardest part to talk about and I'm trying to hold it together. But that's when things went white. Like, and it wasn't just from staring at the bright lights, like things went white. I literally was praying. If you know me personally, I've always kind of struggled with my faith and, you know, questioned God, Jesus, all different things. Not really sure what I believe in, but I know I've always believed in some sort of God. And I just prayed and I'm like, God, if it's my time, I'm ready. Like I was in that much pain and I'm like, just let my little boy be okay. Take me. It was probably like a second or two. I don't know how long it was, but just kind of eventually like things came back to, and then it was a little bit while later. It was 9:35 p.m. and he was out, and then nothing. And nothing. And then he cried. I was just laying there in pain. He was out and just panic set in at that point. Like, okay, I lived, but did he? And that cry was the best sound I've ever heard in my life. And then Sean got to go over and see him, and apparently his head was a little cone-shaped from the pushing and everything, but he left and went with the baby back to the room, and they did like his footprints and everything, which I'm annoyed they didn't wait for me for, because that would have been nice to be a part of. But then they started to close, and it was, again, excruciating. It was the worst pain I've ever been in my entire life. And at one point I'm screaming in pain and I'm begging the anesthesiologist just to knock me out. I was just saying, please just knock me out. I can't do it anymore. And he's just back there, and in between my begs of just like little pressure. It wasn't little, and it wasn't just pressure. I was in excruciating pain. I should have done a cleaning video instead of a makeup video talking about this. But he does eventually, not really fully knock me out, but he does give me more medications. But I don't really remember exactly when this was. I think Sean might have still been there. And it was before he went over to see Jack, while they first started to get him out and start to close. The doctor, what she said, I'll never forget. It pops up in my head all the time. And this is word for word. I have it ingrained into my brain, and it pops up randomly throughout the day sometimes. She's not gonna like this. I'm gonna have to take her uterus back out. Because she heard me like being in pain, and I was probably annoying, and she's like, she's not gonna like this. They probably had sewn up a little bit, but then they had to go back in for something. But yeah, so that was fun. Birth trauma. So eventually knocks me out a lot more and has everything sewn up, wheels me back into the room, and I finally get to actually see my baby. Of course, they brought him over once he was out and cleaned up and everything. Sean brought him over. I got to see him, took a picture and everything. But you can't really see them very well. You see him for like a minute, and then they take him back off, and Sean and the baby goes back. But then I finally came back and finally got to hold him, do skin to skin properly. It was good. But come to find out later, after the fact, I actually lost a lot of blood, and that is probably partly why they had to reopen after having closed, and part of the whole going white thing potentially, but I don't know. I was basically like on the edge of needing a blood transfusion. Finally set my face. So that is my story, birth experience and my birth trauma. I know it may not seem that bad compared to other people that have had to be revived, people who have had multiple blood transfusions, but for me, this is my trauma, and it is something that sits with me. If you can relate to this in any way, I am so sorry, and you are so loved, and I hope you heal. Just because you may have a happy ending, you go home with the baby, you're healthy, that doesn't mean you aren't affected, and that it doesn't permanently affect you, and that it doesn't pop up throughout your day here and there. So thank you for being my little therapist for the day and helping me process my trauma a little bit. If you can relate, again, I am so sorry, but also leave some comments down below, encourage each other. Like, this is so hard. Being a mom alone is amazing and so rewarding, but it's also incredibly difficult. And if you're like me and you don't really have any friends, like, send all the encouragement to each other. Give this video a big thumbs up. I know it was a pretty heavy topic, but I feel like it needs to be talked about more because not everyone gets the happy birth story that they had imagined. Some maybe like mine, where it's not terrible necessarily, but it still can be traumatic and bring you emotional pain and grief. Just remember to love each other and be kind. I love you guys so much. Hit that thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. It really does help my channel out, and I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in my next video.